Hello, hello, hello. It's so good to join you. I was excited to see how many people um, are receiving a lot of information and support from these videos. So I will keep doing them. So today I wanted to talk to empaths because empaths are really challenged in this world. I'm an empath. All my children are empaths. I believe my husband's an empath. Sometimes I believe it, sometimes I'm not quite sure. But an empath is somebody that feels other people's energy or somebody that feels the events around you. So we used to have this running joke in my family that whenever I went out to a restaurant and the waitress would try to seat us somewhere, I would say, "Oh no, I can't sit there. Can we have a different booth?" And I would never know why. I just knew I didn't like that booth for some reason. Later, when I really started to understand energy and how it worked and how we absorb it, I realized that the reason I was being so fussy and picky about sitting in certain locations is because I would sit down and I would absorb whose ever energy was in front of me. So if this is your story, then don't pay attention. My husband used to get so embarrassed because I'd change our seats sometimes one and two times. Um, and he'd say, "Oh, stop being so difficult." And I'm like, "I'm not being difficult. I just feel uncomfortable." But that's really to say, you did not feel, I felt the energy of whoever was there last. So these are the things that I wanted to share with you is like, how do we even know if we're empaths? And then how do we know when we are affected by energy? We know that we are affected by energy by a couple of reasons. The first reason is that when we have a reaction to things that don't make sense to us, it's usually because we're being affected by whatever energy is there or has been there. And that energy can stay around for a while. So you may not know, you may go into a certain place, into a certain location, and not see anyone there. So you're just assuming the energy is fine, but it really isn't. So I want you to think for a moment. If you were ever affected by energy and you had no idea why, like you just either walked into a place, a location, or you were by somebody and you suddenly stopped feeling good. When I was younger, this used to happen all the time, and I would say to my mom, "Oh, I don't feel good," or "Oh, so and so doesn't like me," or "This person's not being very nice," and she'd be like, "Oh, you're so sensitive." And so I actually thought that my sensitivity was a bad thing. It was only later in life that I realized that being an empath can be a superpower if we know how to work with energy and we know how to mind our own energy. So there's three ways that we're really impacted by energy. One is that if suddenly our mood changes, like we're in a good mood, we're happy to be wherever we are, and then we notice a mood shift and we don't know why. Like just suddenly your mood changed, like maybe you suddenly started to feel sad. I'll tell you a little story. One day I was walking off the soccer field with my son, and he was at the goalie, and we're walking out the door, and he was telling me excitedly about the game that I had watched, and he did a really good job. And then all of a sudden, he burst into tears, and I said, "Wow, honey, what's wrong?" And he goes, "I don't know. I just feel so sad." And I said, "Was there anything going on in the game?" "No." "Anything with your teammates?" "No." And then I took a moment and I looked around us. And there on the side of the field that we just walked by was a little boy whose parents were going through a very acrimonious divorce. And when I caught his eye, I felt his sadness. So my son, who's, just walking by, felt the level of sadness and pain this little boy was in, and burst out crying. That's when we don't know how to manage our own energy. We have those reactions. Another time, I'll give you an experience I had when I was in a corporate environment. I had just delivered my babies and I was coming back to meet a couple of my friends for lunch. And I was excited to be there. I had the afternoon off from, watching the children. And I thought, oh, I'm going to have an adult period of time. And I walked out of the restroom, and as I walked out of the restroom, this conference room across the way opened, and all these people started walking down the hall in very intense conversations. And all of a sudden, it was almost like I had an allergic reaction. I started to choke and cough, and I couldn't catch my breath. And I turned myself right back around, walked back into the ladies' room. I'm sneezing, coughing. I'm like, did I just have an allergic reaction to something? But I hadn't had anything to eat. It got so bad, I actually had to leave. I had to text my friends to say, hey, I was here, but something happened and I had this reaction, and I just need to leave and go home. That was me absorbing all of that intense energy, and I was unaware this was coming my way. So, the first thing is to be aware of your own energy, to understand where your energy usually is on a day to day basis. Now, within the day, it could go up and down, but it usually has small swings. So, if you ever start to feel this large swing of energy, then you might know, like, oh, I've just absorbed someone's energy. So, one of the things is having awareness of your own energy. What does it feel like? How you connect to it? When you feel good, how expansive do you feel? So that if you do come across something and it drops you immediately, you'll know. So I wish somebody told me, like, pay attention to my own energy, understand it, see what, a normal swing would be. And when I swing out of that, most likely it's because I've picked up other people's energy. So that's the first thing that you want to do, is to really live into the awareness of your own energy. The second thing that is really important is that when we are affected by other people's energy, we might have a mood swing. So we might be in a happy place and suddenly it drops, like my son's did. We might be in a sad place and we actually absorb someone's good energy and it lifts us up. And so when you are noticing that you're in a mood swing, what you probably need to do is take a minute and look around and say, what's going on around me? Am I absorbing someone's energy and so then it's affecting my mood? And if so, if it's on the negative, you want to like let that energy go, and I'll talk to you in a minute about how you let the energy go. Then the third thing that you want to think about is physical reactions. So I shared with you when I walked out of that ladies' room, I literally started choking, coughing. My eyes were running. I had to blow my nose. I was sneezing. I mean, it looked like I was having a full-on allergy attack. And I didn't have any allergies, I should say. I was in a building. And so sometimes we have these physical discomforts within ourselves. Another time I was walking in the mall and there were two people having a fight behind me. And it was Christmas time. I was super happy. I was, getting so many gifts done. And I was walking down the corridor and all of a sudden I felt really sad. And I didn't know why. But also my energy dropped. It was like almost like the bags in my hands became too heavy. And I thought, wow, what is going on? And of course I turn around, within 4 or 5 feet from me there's a couple having an argument. This is how empaths go through their lives. You're always in reaction to other people's energy unless you do something to manage your own energy. So, one of the things that I want to share with you is around making sure you understand where your energy is when it feels best. So, whether you ground yourself in the morning into Mother Earth, maybe you do some meditation, maybe you imagine universal light flowing through your body. But what you really want to do is feel so good in your own energy field. Now, one of the things I do is I either use these, I call them bands of protection, or bubbles. And what I'll do is I'll talk about the bubbles because the bands of protection, I usually have to install them. The bubbles, you can just visualize. After you ground and center yourself, then you want to imagine yourself putting a big bubble around you. And that bubble is holding the intention that everyone else's energy stays on the outside of the bubble. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't connect, you can't relate, you can't support somebody, you can't share a moment with anyone. It just means that when they're in their process, you're not going to absorb it. The energy is going to hit the outside of the bubble and disperse. Okay? So that's number one. And you can make the bubble colors. I love to make my bubbles colors because the bubbles represent different frequencies. So, like if I find I'm putting a blue bubble around me or a gold bubble is a very high frequency. I know that I might be walking into something or into a large group that I'll need that level of protection. So, if you want to put a color in your bubble, feel free and trust yourself that that color is exactly the color that's going to support you. When we work with energy, we're really working with our intentionality in relationship to the energy of others and the energy of ourselves. So at the end of the day, or at the end of an experience, say you walk into this party and you're feeling great and suddenly you're not feeling great. You may take a moment, look around and say, who's around here? Who might be making me not feel great? Now, if you forgot your bubble, you can just breathe, get yourself centered again in your own energy. Imagine energy flowing into you from universal source so you can breathe and feel even bigger, expanded. And then with your intentionality, you put the bubble around you and then you ask very clearly, any energy that's not mine that I just absorbed leaves now. The thing about energy is that if it's not ours, it leaves, it drops off, as long as you, one, recognize it and you put your intention that it drops away from you. Most empaths just go on with their day feeling a little down or a little not so good. I know I've worked with so many clients that began to make their world smaller and smaller and smaller because it became hard for them to experience all the different energy. So rather than make your world smaller and smaller and smaller, use some of these tools to really help you stay in your most expanded place and in your own energy field. At the end of the day, so say in the moment you start to not feel good, you make that request, any energy that's not mine leaves now, and then you fill yourself back up with your own energy. Remember, the more we connect to universal light and create that flow of energy, of this really beautiful light energy coming towards us, the more capacity we have to even receive more of this light. Does that make sense to you? If it does, just make a comment. What people a lot of times don't realize is that we build our energetic muscle. Like we come in with all this energy. We have a lot of energy that we have access to, universal light, beautiful energy from our soul, from our spirit, from our life force energy. We have access to it all. But if we are not minding how we walk through the world, then that energy gets impacted and it gets drained and lowered. Another way that you can tell whether you have bumped into someone else's energy or you took on someone else's energy is if you suddenly begin to not feel well, like physically. And if you don't feel well physically, I told you what you can do. You just ask that energy to go away. If you don't feel well emotionally, what you can do is to sort of breathe in to the energy and you connect with your own source of light. And you imagine that beautiful source of light coming from your soul to you. Sometimes I imagine it as a shower of light. Sometimes I imagine standing under a waterfall and all this big, beautiful light comes into me. And it will feel good because it's coming from my soul. So I already have an affinity for it and it already is aligned and synced to my energy field. So this is if you suddenly start to feel overwhelmed or sad or angry and you don't know why, this is a great technique to use. Now, you might be in mixed company and you say to yourself, I can't do it now because there's all these people. I want to say absolutely you can. You can walk into another room, you can say, I need to use the restroom, and you go in. These techniques take no more than a few minutes to do. Leaving yourself not feeling good creates that separation and also concern about, I don't want to be out in public. I don't want to be around these people anymore. Or you might start to feel more and more anxious because you're absorbing energy and you're not even aware that this energy is glomming onto you. So it brings up a level of anxiety. So if you use any one of the techniques I taught you, from bubbling up, from flowing light from your universal source, or from connecting directly with your soul and asking your soul to fill you up and drop off any energy that's not yours. Any one of those methods will work to keep you in your own field of light. I hope this was super helpful. I know that when you're an empath, we're always looking for new ways to be able to manage our way of being in the world and to be able to be out in the world without feeling so heavy or drained. Or somebody once described it like a ping pong ball. Like they're pinging and ponging on all these different people's energy, and so they lose a sense of themselves. They're no longer centered and grounded in who they are. So, in order to be centered and grounded in who you are, put your bubble around you, make your connection to universal source or to soul, and fill yourself up with light. And fill yourself, when you fill yourself up, you'll notice your energy expanding. All right, I hope this was super helpful for you. Leave comments for us. We love to see what people are responding to. And by the way, if you have a particular topic that you'd like me to speak into, drop a note to us. I'm happy to speak into any kinds of topics. I've been at this for 20 years, actually way more than 20 years, but I don't really want to age myself that much. But I've been at this for a long time. I have such a knowledge of how to support people and work with people and help them run the lives that you want to run, but do it in a way that feels good for you as well. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a fantastic day. Bye.